Lydia, thank you so much for taking the time to being here today. First question, how are you? How's everything going on your side?
Things are good. Happy to have summertime. And, just it's warm finally.
Yeah.
So I'm really enjoying that. And thank you for having me. This is really exciting. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, pretty good. Well, we're in the middle of starting winter here in Australia on the other side of the planet. So everything is doing well. Yeah. So Lydia, maybe you can tell me about you and tell the audience about you and what you're doing and what's your business and just tell us your story.
Yeah, so I am the founder and director of a reading clinic that's online, and we help children with dyslexia and struggling readers become independent learners, while also helping their parents find community with other parents and other families who are, struggling with the same kind of academic, differences. And then I am dyslexic. And so I have grown up going through this process. And so I went through language therapy and reading therapy and things like that. And so it really inspired me to do this and put it online so we can reach anyone, anywhere. So rural communities that don't have access to services or people who don't have time to commute or, you name it, we're there. And so that is kind of what has inspired this process.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I'm fascinated by the online aspect of what you're doing because, we've specifically, we just at the end, hopefully, of a big worldwide pandemic. And obviously, everyone has to adapt to the online world, even school and education, all the classes were done remotely. And tell me how this works, because correct me if I'm right, if I'm wrong, Lydia, is that you've worked in clinic before, like you've worked face to face with kids in the past, and now you've decided to move online to be able to reach to people who actually need your support but don't really have the access. How does that work?
Right. So that's exactly right. I've been face to face before. I got together with a team. We put this online, founded the organization. That was amazing. Again, to reach people who didn't have access to the services. And the way it works is we use Zoom, and then we have all these platforms that have different manipulatives on them. So the kids are actually still doing everything they would be doing in person, but they're using their mouse, and they're still using their hands, and they're still pounding words or tapping things, doing things like that. But they also have control of my screen and all the materials that they're, that they need to learn. So that's kind of cool. When everything shut down, I was like, well, I've been using Zoom since before it was cool. We've been doing this for a long time. So we had a lot of experience doing it. So I think that was really, really beneficial and helpful to us. Everything.
Yeah. That's super cool. Yeah, for sure. Because now, you can reach out to people who need support, and regardless of where they are, right? It's the same in Australia, right? Australia is a very large country. And so you have very, very remote regional area, where we're talking, doing 400K before having a large city. And so you have so many, people, families and students who need help, but there's just no one there in the town to support. And they have to drive 200, 300K to come. And I guess with that solution, having the online access is just fascinating.
And it's really beneficial too to families who have multiple children, busy schedules. Even if you have access to services in your community, it still might be easier. The other thing that I find with online intervention is that reading is very sensitive. This is a very, very sensitive topic that these kids are dealing with. And we just took it to a very private location. We brought it to them in their homes where they're safe. No one sees them being pulled out of class. They don't have to be checked out early to go to their special teacher. they're not seen walking down the hall with their intervention, you know. So it took all the self-consciousness that the kids are feeling that we're not doing it intentionally. It's just naturally there, and they're already feeling it because they struggle. And we took it all, we kind of eliminated that. We took it and we put it in a safe space, and now, like, they're thriving.
Yeah.
So I think that was another cool side effect that I think, you know, so it originally started for people who couldn't get access to in-person services, and it's kind of snowballed and evolved into, my child really doesn't want this in school. You know, we're very nervous. We're feeling a lot of shame. We've got a lot of self-esteem issues. How can we resolve this issue? And so, no one has to know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a personal thing. Yeah. So, how was your experience as a dyslexic growing up? Like, how was school for you? And, you know, how everything.
So, you know, that shame thing that I was just talking about? Well, that was heavy. I definitely remember what it felt like to be the kid that struggled, to be the kid that, you know, didn't really know what they were doing, or was kind of the dumb kid. It took a really big toll on my self-esteem. I was very fortunate that I had a few teachers. I had a handful of teachers and phenomenal parents who just would not let me drown. And I was also a very, very stubborn child. And so that was very helpful as well. So that's, you know, that's something I see in a lot of the kids that I work with and that Jump works with, the determination and the tenacity and this just like, I'm going to make it happen, and the grit, because that's really what gets them through, is the grit. So I had a lot of grit as a kid. And I think that that's kind of what inspired me to do this, was that I thought that my experience could be maybe a little bit better than it was. And I thought maybe I could make it more fun for other kids. And that's what I've been trying to do, and just creating these relationships with them and really focusing, instead of focusing on what they couldn't do, or, you know, always talking about, you know, you can't read, you can't do this, you can't do that, but we're going to help you read. We're going to help you do this and that. In addition to that, I throw in this like sea of strengths model by Sally Shayowitz, which is just this idea of, here are all the things that you do so well. And then I highlight that for the kids. All the Jump instructors highlight that for the kids. So if a child doesn't do something well or right, you know, they may arrive at the wrong answer, but they did it in a really interesting way. And so we're pointing that out to them, always saying like, okay, this is really cool. Not every child thinks this way. This is really interesting. You have really, really strong critical thinking skills, or really strong this, or really strong that. And making sure that they know where their strengths are so they can capitalize on those. So that was a really long-winded way of saying my experience wasn't awesome, and here are all the ways that I'm trying to improve it for these kids.
Absolutely. You know, that made me think. I had a chat with a school psychologist. That was actually during the pandemic last year. His name is Adam Parker. He's actually also was a guest. And he mentioned something that's really, really similar to what you've mentioned, which is sort of like give praise for the attempt. So it's like, you know, it's not about whether you're right or wrong. It's, you know, just encourage the fact that they're trying more than the result that they have. And that's something that I can see so many times. Like, you know, I love having this conversation because everyone has a slightly different point of view and slightly way of doing things. But on the overall scheme of things, you always observe those, like, everyone is actually doing the same thing, but slightly differently. And those things work, and those things are positive. And so as a, what would you recommend parent to do? Like, let's say, you know, you're a parent and, you know, you see your kids having difficulty, and like, what's going on? You know, what would be something that you would recommend parent to do in terms of like of a first step, whether it's, you know, talking to school or
that's really difficult to you know, the first step would definitely be talking to the school. Do you have any concerns? But remember, you've got that kind of mom or dad mojo going on. If you've got a feeling, you know, trust it. If you've got an instinct, trust it. Okay. And I would say the biggest thing is don't wait. When you have that feeling, find Orton Gillingham services. Because whether your child is, you know, diagnosably dyslexic or just kind of a garden variety struggling reader, it's best practices. It cannot hurt. It will only help. So I think that's the biggest thing I would say is do not wait. It's not going to get better. They're not going to outgrow it. It's not going to be solved with colored paper and lenses and things like that. You know, go ahead and get the support and make sure that the services are Orton Gillingham based, multisensory, systematic, and explicit. So if you remember nothing else I say, those are the 4 things. You know, Orton Gillingham, multisensory, systematic, explicit instruction. And it's never too early. You know, I mean, we can start doing this with pre-K children. So again, don't wait. As soon as you have an inkling.
Yeah. And I think they're easy to find as well, because like if you're a parent and you've never heard of dyslexia, or it's funny, you know, we have people who, because there's this fine line where everyone know what dyslexia is. You know, people joke about it. Oh, I'm a bit dyslexic, you know, that sort of thing. So it's like everyone knows about it, but when it happens to you or your kids, suddenly, and that's what we've observed at Dystech. It's like it seems that people instantly just don't think about it, right? They go on Google and they're like, "What's going on? Like, why is my child can't read? Like, my child can't read grade 3, whatever, you know?" And they just do those Google search, and then through the sea of information online, they start reaching the conclusion that, damn, you know, all my Google search lead to dyslexia, but I don't want to type the word dyslexia in Google search, right?
That's so interesting, because I find that, you know, sometimes parents carry a lot of shame around this because it's hereditary. And so, you know, you get a lot of like, well, I didn't struggle. I didn't, you know, there's a lot of like, well, I read to them every day, or I did. And it's, you know, it's really important, I think, to sit down with parents and understand that they are just as scared as the kids. And that's the other thing that's the other advice I would give to parents is find someone you jive with, because you're going to be working with that person for a long time. That person is going to be helping your kid or that clinic or organization. Make sure you jive with them and make sure that they, you know, you feel comfortable enough, because it's vulnerable for parents as well. And so anyway, they don't want to type dyslexia and they don't want to label their child. They're worried that this might have been their fault even. And that's so tragic. And I mean, I have more conversations with crying parents than, you know, just saying like, it's not your fault. It's okay. You know, it's not because you fed him something like gluten or, you know, you didn't eat enough or whatever. It just happens. And the good news is that it responds to intervention. And so I think it's interesting you're bringing up like parents not wanting to Google it, and they're everybody kind of knows what it is, but kind of doesn't, because there's some bad information out there. You know, just making sure that parents find someone that they too are comfortable with, because this is a journey just as much for the child as it is for the parent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even, you know, because I've been like recently, we've really been trying to sort of like understand parents and understand the emotion that they go through. And it's like, if you look at this psychologically speaking as well, it's like, well, let's assume, you know, your child is going through school and they can't read, and then, you know, and let's assume that the school is saying, you know, you might need to like put a bit more work, or, you know, it might be a bit lazy, right? Which happen often. You know, you have some school who just drive to that conclusion. And so then as a parent, you're in a situation where you either need to believe that or be like like objective enough to be able to say, well, maybe it's dyslexia, which in their mind is a disability, under law. But it's like it's too terrible choice, because like there's no good choice in this. It's like it's horrible to either acknowledge one or acknowledge the other, and so psychologically speaking, it's super hard to be aware enough, and because it's your child, it's like it's love, right? You don't want anything bad, and so it seems that it's super hard to, as a parent, to really say, okay, it's fine, it's potentially dyslexia, or it's potentially something else. In any case, it's going to be not great, and we're going to have to walk this through, and it can be great,
Yeah.
But it seems, yeah.
I think you're hitting something really, really important, which is like, it feels like it's a learning disability, which is bad, or my kid is lazy, or stupid, or whatever word the school or your parent or your teacher or the peers or whoever has attributed to this child. So we've got, on one hand, laziness and a lack of intellectual capability. That's not good. On the other hand, we have a learning disability. And what I found is a lot of people, so we've decided both of these things are bad. But and so people are actually afraid to find out whether their child is dyslexic or not. More often than not, actually 100% of the time that I have been doing this, that doesn't mean that things won't change. But I have found that parents are so grateful that there was a reason, that the diagnosis and the label is actually very alleviating than this kind of ambiguous, I don't really know what's going on situation. And the other thing too, that I think we as people who are in the field and professionals need to start talking about and really driving home is that dyslexia is not a bad thing. I'm going to say it again. Dyslexia is not a bad thing. In fact, it has been more of an asset to me than anything. I mean, once I figured out how to read, but like that part was kind of a struggle, admittedly. But once you get past that, it is so, the way I think about things and the way I look at the world and the way I process the world is so different. And I see it in the kids. And I think that on my LinkedIn, I've got this network of people who are not professional or not in the field, but they are professionals, very successful in their fields, all dyslexic, and they'll comment on my stuff and be like, oh, it's a superpower, or, oh, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, it is. It really, really is. So I think that you learn a lot of really cool things as a young child. You learn a lot of grit, a lot of perseverance. You learn who you are in a different way. And as you get older, you have this way of looking at the world that nobody else sees. So I think it's really cool. So I think if we can kind of bust this myth around dyslexia is bad, I think most parents might be a little bit, the emotional implication of it is very different. But I think that, advice that I would offer is that don't be afraid of the label, because it's actually very freeing. And again, dyslexia response to intervention. And this is so cool because your child is going to have like this way of thinking about the world, and you have an opportunity to learn so many cool things from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's fascinating. I had a chat with someone called Mark last week, I think, and so he's a marketing and brand strategist. He worked for people like Netflix and all those big brand, and he's dyslexic, and he created this thing called I Am Lex. And he did the presentation to me about this new thing that he wanted to build, and it's like a campaign, and he was all about because he's quite in the generation of social media and stuff like that, and so he was like, have you seen the meme on social media about dyslexia? How outdated they are and design is completely rubbish. And he was like, well, what he wants to do is to shift. What he wants to do is actually brand, in a marketing terms, dyslexia, and have a different perception of what dyslexia is. Have cool photo that everyone likes now on Instagram and stuff like that, and really picture dyslexia in a much more modern and positive way than what it's currently being doing. And that's definitely part of how do we remove this stigma of, or this assumption of, damn, it's bad and stuff like that, and there's plenty of like organizations out there who like promote, here is the successful multimillionaire guy, here's the other one, here's this. But the reality is, like, I mean, it's good to inspire people with those things, but and I've discovered this recently because we were in the process of raising money for Dystech, and so you have to approach investor, people who believe in impact startup, what we do, and so you start reaching out to people who are successful, who made other company or other things in their life very successful, and you're actually talking to them, and suddenly you have one that says, hey, I'm super interested, I'm dyslexic as well, and I did all of this, and you're like, holy crap, this is much more relatable to me because I'm having a chat with this person. Mm-hmm. That person is dyslexic. They've achieved all of this, and so I think you're right. I think there needs to be a paradigm shift into the branding of dyslexia.
Absolutely, I'm with you on that. And the other thing too is that we talk about Walt Disney and Steven Spielberg and all. Well, those are great, inspiring stories. But am I going to be Walt Disney?
Yeah.
I'm not. And the thing is that, I had a parent say to me the other day that someone had talked to her child about all these famous dyslexics and, kind of that situation. And she goes, I just feel like we need to remember what part of the story we're in. And I thought that was really... Yes, it was very profound because, we're in the part of the story with the kids that, we haven't become this great inventor or this incredible cartoonist or, a multimillionaire entrepreneur or whatever. We haven't become that yet. We're in the part of the story that everyone has, all those stories have, where they've got a child. They, as a child, are very insecure and they're devastated and they don't know if they can make it. And all, that's the part of the story we're in. And we need to remember that. And also not put the pressure on the child to be the next Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
That's unrealistic. And not saying that they can't do it, but they may not want to do that. So I think remembering the part, kind of what you're saying about rebranding dyslexia and remembering it's the relatability. Like you and I are talking and I feel like I can relate to you and that like you're in a startup, I'm in a startup, we're both kind of in the same field. Like that is a connection point. And I think we need to be able to do that for the kids at an earlier level as well.
Absolutely. I'm going to segue a bit because I'd like your point of view on something. And if you do have one on this, but it's a tricky one. So like, for the past 3 months, we've been working very closely with adult health professional, people like you who've got like years and years and years of experience of teaching how to read and teaching dyslexic or kids with learning disability how to read and write. And so we went down the rabbit hole of what is reading, what are the reading concepts, this whole sea of information, like what are sight word, what are regular word, irregular word, what is phonemic decoding, blah, blah, blah. This list is quite intense. Yeah. And so I've discovered this over the past 3 months. And even though I did some course on dyslexia, last year, it wasn't that intense. And I was realizing, I'm like, there is no way, and that's just my personal opinion, is that there's no way that a normal English teacher can like learn all of this without specializing. like, it doesn't make sense to me. The amount of information required to really understand, well, what comes first, right? Do you need to learn the sound before be able to sort of decode the letter? And, you know, it's like, this is so much information that it seems to me, and I don't know your point of view on, is that it's just not feasible for teacher to learn the full curriculum on how to teach kids, you know, and on top of that, learning this whole details about exactly what's happening when you read and how to instruct, you know, what are the instructions for X, Y, Z. It seems to me more that it's actually not on the teacher, but more on the curriculum side of things that things needs to change. I don't know. What's your view on this?
Well, that's a can of worms.
Yes, I know. I like cans of worms.
I think there have been times when I have spoken with teachers and they, you know, they say things like, I wish I would have learned this when I was getting my degree. I wish I knew this before, you know, and we also have continuing education. So I think there are a couple things, you know, I don't think it's one or the other. I think we need to make it accessible to teachers, right? So that they can get the training that they need. And the reality is that they don't have to totally specialize. There are reading specialists. There are people like me. There are people out there who can do this for like really, really, really severe cases. What would be great is if we could get them to a place where they had the resources and the knowledge and the support that they needed. Because I truly believe, okay, I'll back up to that. The knowledge, the resources, and the support that they needed to do this in their classrooms. Okay, because I really believe that teachers, in my experience, teachers feel just as frustrated as the child, as the parent, because no one went into a classroom situation to be like, I'm going to not teach kids to read today. They go in with this, you know, like we all do. We come in and we want to be this, we've got all these idealistic views and we want to be great. We want to impact kids' lives in a positive way. And, you know, they want the opportunities to do that. I truly believe that. But it's really hard because some of the curriculum is clumsy. Some of the training is rushed, you know, especially this last year. Teachers have been really overwhelmed. So they haven't had the opportunity to really dive in to this information. And they're not getting the ongoing support that they need in most situations. So these are, I don't know if that makes any sense, but I think
it does.
Components that come together. And the same is true with the principal. No principal gets into that, you know, that office and thinks like, oh, I'm not going to do I'm going to do the worst job I can. They are all trying the best that they can. They want to help these kids. They want all this stuff. So, and, you know, principals want to support the teachers who want to support the kids, you know, and that's how it's really ideally going to work. And I just think that everybody needs to, you know, have a little bit more access. I also think we need to be willing to explore different ideas and different curriculums. It's so easy to get stuck in the status quo because new stuff is hard and it's scary. And we might not do it perfectly the first time. And, you know, and so being willing to kind of do that and kind of embrace that growth mindset and say like, I don't know how to do it yet, is also really important. And having the support that, you know, if you mess up, it's not the end of the world. I think those are really, really important components of that discussion as well. And I truly think everyone is doing what they can. I'm not trying to bash anybody. I think that we're all in this, there's a community. We're all in this together and the goal is to help the kids. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So what would you want from a teacher to do for the first interaction with you as a reading specialist? What is it that as a teacher, what should I do? And, what should I do if, I feel that the kids is struggling, and I'm unable to support because it requires more, whether it's time, whether it's expertise, whatever it is, and I want to refer that kids to, someone like you. What would be the first thing that I need to do, and what would be some good information for you that as a teacher I can give you to actually get your head around what's going on and start potentially some support in place?
Okay, so sorry, I'm going to ask for a little clarification. Like, if you're a teacher and you're calling me about a student, are you asking for support in the classroom, or are you asking for me to work with the child?
Yeah, if you were to work, like, both, what would you recommend a teacher do? Like, let's say I'm a teacher and I've got one or two kids in my classroom who struggle, and there's two options. One, I either don't have the time to really spend a couple of hours individually with each student, or I just don't. I lack expertise in terms of being able to pinpoint what's going on. What do I do? Am I calling you?
So
what's the go here?
I think the biggest thing to do is start to kind of have those conversations with the parents. Get in touch with the parents. Hey, I'm worried. Hey, I'm concerned. And remember, the parents are going to feel nervous and anxious about this too. So when we have those discussions with parents, we want to have a solution. So if I were a teacher, I might say, I'm really nervous, or, love Johnny. He's a great kid, or Susie, or whatever, love him. He's a great kid. Here are some things that I see that child doing really well, super excited for them. They just accomplished X, Y, Z. And then I might say, but I have a few concerns about the reading, and I would be interested to see if we would want to explore some outside help. And that would be the preliminary conversation. Just very gently kind of pushing that, because sometimes that call is scary for a parent to make.
Yeah,
that's a scary call to pick up the phone and call Jump Reading. It's like, that's half the battle right there, and I'm so glad you called. So let's celebrate that. So that's a scary call, and so just continuing to follow up with them on that and have someone in mind. The biggest thing that happens, or that I hear, is that teachers go and they say, our schools will say, oh, well, we're not reading on grade level. Now what?
Yeah.
The parent needs somewhere to go. So doing that preliminary research and saying, like, hey, I've heard of so-and-so, they have a great reputation, or here are a couple names, or here are a couple organizations, and, talking to the community and seeing, like, who does well with this? Like, who has a great reputation for working with kids, and working with kids with dyslexia or reading struggles. So that's a big thing. Being very, very, giving them some hope, both in terms of here are the things that your child does well, and here are some places you can go. And then being persistent with it. Have you called? Have you thought about this? Do you have any questions? How can I help you? How can I support you? And then in the classroom, the biggest thing I would say to teachers is time. Dyslexia is the biggest robber of time. Okay. And so what ends up happening is, if you give a child a time test, or you tell them to hurry up, or you tell them to it's just going to freeze them, because they already don't think they can get it done. And if you tell them to hurry, oh my gosh, panic. Just their whole brain is going to go completely blank. So that would be a big thing. Not saying, oh, this. They know. They know they're supposed to remember it, but they don't know it. Not saying you knew this yesterday, or you knew that word on the other page. Things like that are meant truly to be, like, encouraging. Like, you're trying to prompt them, like, you knew this word a couple minutes ago, or you knew this answer yesterday, or, because you're trying to give them some context to remember things. But that really just shuts them down, because they kind of know that already. So those are things in the classroom that you could do. And then I think as far as like just resources, get involved, start reading books. Fish in a Tree is a great place to start. It's a very light, easy read. I just posted it on my LinkedIn. Very, very cute book. The Gift of Dyslexia. That's another great one. And that's for both parents and teachers. You know, those are great resources as well to kind of look into what's going on. What are you seeing? And getting informed without having to do all the, you know, the coursework and
like that. So it seems to me that it's really about communication and being able to suggest solutions or suggest names, suggest what to do next, you know? That's very interesting.
And this love for the child, like the parents shouldn't walk away feeling like you don't like their child. They should walk away feeling like you're a cheerleader. You're here. We're going to get this child through. And that's, you know, parents are more likely to take action if they feel that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's another thing as far as communication goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Lydia, that's a bit of an inspirational question, but it's like, what would you say to a struggling dyslexic student who's listening to us right now?
I would say go read my For the Kids on the website. I wrote a whole letter to struggling readers. But I think the biggest thing that I want a struggling reader to know is that you're not going to believe me, but you are smart. And this is going to get better. And you can do it. Like you're gonna come around the corner someday and you're gonna think about your dyslexia and you're gonna think about all the things you accomplished because of it, not in spite of it, and you're gonna be really excited. That day is coming. But for now, I totally understand how much this is a bummer. I totally understand how little you want to do your reading therapy, and that's okay. You don't have to want to do it. You know, but you got to keep powering through. So that would be the biggest thing. Is like, yeah, I get it. I get it from start to finish. I get not wanting to do it. And no kid was more angry about it than me. I'll tell you what. No one was more mad. But it does get better. So.
Amazing.
Stick with.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. That was a great chat. Before we close up, where can people actually reach out to you?
Yeah, so visit our website, jumpreading.org. I'm also on LinkedIn, Lydia Allen. We also have a LinkedIn page, Jump Reading, and a Facebook. And you may call us or email us at lets_talk@jumpreading.org. And we're happy to chat with you guys anytime. Whether, you know, and it's a no commitment phone call, you know, so feel free to call just to learn more. Or if you want to set up a consultation or, you know, you need help advocating. So we're here for whatever you need.
Amazing. And on that point, Lydia, you're based in the US, but do you work with only people in the US right now, or do you have plan to expand, or how does that work?
We work with English speakers right now.
Okay.
English speaking, because I don't know how to do this in, you know, and the only other language I speak is French, and I don't know how to do it in French. So I understand the principles, but I got to figure all that out. Eventually, yeah, it'd be super cool to literally be wherever. So no, we're happy to work with anyone, anywhere, as long as it's an English speaking student.